I used to think healing meant forgetting. But as I sit in my office, overlooking the Boston skyline glittering against the dusk, I realize some memories don't fade. They just quiet down until something shakes them awake. Tonight, it's an email. The subject line reads, "Urgent. Your mother's condition." My breath catches. I stare at the glowing screen, the hum of the heater suddenly too loud, my silk blouse clinging to my skin. It's been 8 years since I last spoke to her. 8 years since that night in the ICU when I learned what she did and what she hid. I close my eyes and let the memories stir, one by one. The sterile scent of disinfectant, the rhythmic beep of heart monitors, the sound of her laughter echoing in the hallway when she thought I couldn't hear. My assistant knocks gently. "Dr. Hale? You all right?" I nod, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just old ghosts." When she leaves, I open the email again. My hand trembles slightly as I read that my mother, Carolyn Hale, is in the same hospital where I almost died. The irony doesn't escape me. I take a slow breath, steadying my voice in the empty room. "Guess it's time we finally told the truth, Mom. I was 17 when my body betrayed me. One morning, I woke up feeling dizzy, my chest tight, breath shallow. By evening, I collapsed on the kitchen floor. The last thing I remember before everything went black was my mother's voice, calm, detached, as she told someone on the phone, 'It's probably just the flu.' When I opened my eyes again, white light flooded my vision. The air smelled sharp, antiseptic, sterile. Machines hummed beside me. My throat burned from the oxygen tube. Panic clawed its way through my chest as I realized I couldn't speak. My dad, Richard, wasn't there. Neither was Mom. Just a nurse adjusting my four. When I managed to croak out, "Where's my family?" she hesitated. "Your mother said they're at home resting. They think you're stable now." Stable? I was in the ICU. Hours blurred into days. I drifted between dreams and feverish half-sleep, the sound of the monitors my only company. It wasn't until the third day that my father walked in, smiling gently, holding flowers. "Hey, kiddo. Heard the flu hit you hard." The flu. Something inside me froze. I looked at him, then at Mom, who stood behind him, perfect as ever, lipstick flawless, hair in soft waves. Her eyes met mine for a split second before she looked away. That's when I knew. She'd lied to him, to me, to everyone.
But why?
Weeks later, when I was finally strong enough to walk, I found the answer. A nurse, unaware of what she was revealing, mentioned that Mom had been visiting the man in room 214 every night. Curiosity led me there. Through the small glass window, I saw her, holding another man's hand, laughing softly, the same warmth she never showed me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just pressed my palm against the cold glass and whispered to myself, "Tell the truth, even when it hurts." It was something my grandmother used to say, the woman who raised me before Mom took me back. In that moment, I decided I would never let a lie define me again. When I walked out of that hospital, pale and still weak, I left behind more than illness. I left behind the version of me that needed her. After graduation, I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and left for New York. No goodbyes. No forwarding address. My father thought I was finding myself before college. My mother didn't bother asking. Maybe that was easier for both of us. New York was loud, indifferent, and honest in a way my family never was. I worked part-time at a diner on 9th Avenue, serving coffee to strangers and pretending I wasn't terrified. During the day, I studied pre-med courses at NYU, determined to understand the body that had once betrayed me. Healing others, I thought, might help me heal myself. The first person who really saw me, was Dr. Meredith Lang, one of my professors. She was sharp, demanding, and impossibly elegant. One afternoon, after class, she stopped me as I packed my books. "You have a survivor's focus," she said. "That can take you farther than talent ever will, if you don't let your past define you." Her words stayed with me. Meredith became my mentor, my anchor. She'd invite me to her office, make terrible instant coffee, and talk about everything from anatomy to self-worth. When I told her I couldn't afford another semester, she smiled faintly and handed me an envelope. Inside was a scholarship recommendation with her signature. "Use this," she said. "Then, one day, give someone else a chance." I promised her I would. The years that followed were brutal. There were nights I cried over textbooks until dawn. Mornings I went to work on 3 hours of sleep. But with every passing semester, I felt myself rebuilding. I started volunteering at the same hospital where I'd once been a patient, first as a trainee, then as an intern. The smell of antiseptic no longer scared me. It reminded me of how far I'd come. My first real win came the day I was accepted into the residency program at St. Gabriel's Medical Center. I remember standing outside the hospital, holding the acceptance letter, the city wind tangling my hair as tears blurred the lights. I wasn't that fragile girl in the ICU anymore. But I didn't tell my parents. Not when I finished med school. Not when I published my first paper. Not even when I opened my own clinic years later. The silence wasn't out of spite, it was protection. My success was mine, untouched by their lies. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through my mother's social media. Photos of charity galas, garden parties, perfect smiles. My father, loyal as ever, by her side. I wondered if they ever thought of me, or if the girl who almost died had just become another family inconvenience. Either way, I had built a life without them, a life made of truth, resilience, and quiet triumph. And for the first time, that was enough. The drive back to my hometown felt surreal. The same winding roads, the same whispering trees, but I wasn't the same girl who once begged for her mother's affection. I parked outside St. Mary's Hospital, the same building that once held me between life and death. Now it held her. When I walked through the glass doors, the receptionist barely looked up. "Family of Carolyn Hale?" she asked. "Yes," I said, the word foreign on my tongue. She pointed me toward room 214. The number hit me like a jolt. It was his old room. The man my mother had chosen over honesty. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Inside, she lay pale and frail, tubes tracing across her skin like fragile veins of glass. Her hair was thinner, her lipstick gone. For a moment, pity flickered in me. Then her eyes opened. "Emily." Her voice was raspy, disbelieving. "You came." "I got your message," I said flatly. "They said it was urgent." Her lips trembled into a smile. "I didn't think you'd." I almost didn't. I pulled a chair closer, my heels echoing on the tile. But then I realized there's something we never finished. She looked away, fingers fidgeting with the blanket. "Emily, that was a long time ago. I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" My voice was steady, but my heart pounded. "You told Dad I had the flu while I was in the ICU. You lied to him, to me, while you were sneaking into another man's hospital room." Her eyes widened. "You knew." I was 17, not blind. She covered her face with shaking hands. "I thought I was protecting him." "Protecting you?" "From what?" "The truth." I leaned back, letting silence stretch between us. "You didn't protect us, Mom. You protected your image." The door opened softly. My father stepped in, older now, shoulders heavy, holding a bouquet of white lilies. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Emily? I can't believe it's you." I stood slowly. "Hi, Dad." He looked between us, confusion clouding his expression. "Did you two make peace?" I smiled faintly, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Not exactly. But it's time you knew what really happened." I turned to Mom. "You can tell him, or I can." Her lips parted, trembling. "Emily, please. Tell him." For a moment, she said nothing. Then, finally, her voice broke. "Richard, I was seeing someone else back then. When Emily was sick, I was with him. I told you she just had the flu because I couldn't face you if she died while I was gone." The words hung heavy in the sterile air. My father's flowers slipped from his hand, petals scattering like ash. He looked at her, then at me, his eyes glassy, his voice cracking. "Is that true?" I nodded once. "Every word." The silence that followed felt like the sound of something breaking, a marriage, a lie, a lifetime. I walked to the window, staring at the rain sliding down the glass. I didn't come here for revenge, I said softly. I came because I'm done carrying your secrets. When I turned back, my mother was sobbing, my father was trembling, and for the first time in years, I felt light. They finally saw the woman they had buried under lies, the doctor, the survivor, the daughter who lived. And they could never unsee her again. The following morning, sunlight poured through the hospital blinds, casting thin stripes of gold across the sterile floor. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up below. Behind me, my parents sat in silence, two people who had built their lives on appearances now stripped bare by truth. My mother's voice cracked first. Emily, I don't expect forgiveness, but please don't hate me. I turned slowly, meeting her eyes. I don't hate you, Mom. I just don't believe you anymore. My father looked lost. All these years, I defended her. I told people you were distant, ungrateful. I'm so sorry. It's not about apologies, I said quietly. It's about change. They both stared at me, unsure what that meant. So I laid it out, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Mom, you need to stop pretending. You've spent your whole life polishing a version of yourself that doesn't exist. Start therapy. Be honest with Dad, with yourself. No more secrets. If you can't do that, we have nothing to rebuild. Her lip quivered. And your father? I turned to him. Dad, you've lived in denial for too long. You saw the cracks and chose to look away. I need you to stop saving people who don't want to be saved. Including her. You want me in your life? Then you start living in the truth, too. He nodded slowly, eyes red. If that's what it takes, I'll do it. I sighed, setting my cup down. It's not a punishment. It's a condition. You both get to earn a place in my life again, but only through honesty. For a long moment, no one spoke. Machines beeped softly in the background, counting time neither of us could get back. My mother reached for my hand. And what about you, Emily? What will you do now? I pulled gently away. Keep doing what I've always done, help people heal. Only now I'll start with myself. Her tears came quietly this time, not out of shame, but release. Maybe for the first time in her life, she understood what truth could do. It broke things, yes, but it also set them free. I picked up my coat, draped it over my arm, and turned to leave. Before stepping out, I paused at the door. One more thing, I said softly. You both taught me what lies can destroy. So here's my promise. I'll spend the rest of my life building what truth can save. Then I walked out, heels clicking against the polished floor, each step lighter than the last. Months passed before I heard from them again. Life moved forward quietly. My clinic expanded, my research was published, and I began mentoring young women in medicine the same way Dr. Lang once guided me. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had softened, reshaped into something I could carry without breaking. One afternoon, while reviewing patient files, I received a letter. The handwriting was unmistakably my father's, shaky, deliberate. Emily, your mother's in therapy now. She talks about you every session. She said the truth hurt more than the illness ever did, but it's the only pain that's healing her. I'm learning too. Thank you for forcing us to see what we refused to. I read it twice, then set it aside, exhaling slowly. A part of me wanted to pick up the phone, to bridge the distance. Another part knew some bridges had to rebuild themselves. A week later, I found myself in my apartment, standing by the window as the evening light dipped low. On my dresser sat my grandmother's old locket, the one she gave me before she died. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside was a faded picture of her and a tiny folded note. Her handwriting, neat and small, read, "Tell the truth, even when it hurts." I smiled through tears. That simple sentence had carried me through a lifetime of lies. For the first time, I felt peace, not the kind that comes from forgiveness, but from understanding. My mother's deceit had nearly broken me, but it also pushed me to become the woman I was meant to be, one who didn't hide behind illusion. I closed the locket, letting it rest against my palm. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Sirens, laughter, car horns. It sounded like truth. Messy, raw, real. As I turned off the lights and prepared to leave for my evening rounds, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The girl who once begged to be believed was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned to believe in herself. I whispered softly, almost like a prayer. She said I had the flu, but what she really gave me was fire, and I learned how to live with it. And with that, I walked.